Okay.
Okay. All right.
And we shall do that.
Uh-oh.
To start the recording. And at this point, I am going to be passing the control to Paul Rigo, who is our wildlife specialist, one of our wildlife specialists in charge of mammals and a bear specialist. So I've passed it to Paul, and he is now controlling my screen. So good luck, Paul.
Okay. Thank you, Susan. And hello out there to everybody listening and viewing on your computers. Um, it's a different time here, and we're probably going to be doing more of this remote contact. So today I'm going to talk about black bears. I'm going to go through just a very short bit of history, then give you some of the biology for black bears in the state, and then touch a little bit of management and our coexistence with bears. So it's hard to not talk about black bears without talking about forest. Today, Connecticut is quite heavily forested. It's estimated that 65% of the state is forested. And you can go hiking and you can get up on a higher peak and get views like this today. Even though we're a heavily populated state, we also do have quite a bit of forest. Now, this hasn't always been the case. When Europeans first colonized the state, there was quite extensive land clearing. Land was cleared for agriculture, and wood was the primary fuel source. So beginning in colonial times and then moving through time, there was extensive clearing of our forests. This chart shows what is thought to have occurred in the last 400 years or so. Before European settlers, it's thought that our state was nearly 100% forest cover. And as time, that forest cover decreased as there were great demands on the forest for agriculture, for fuel, for our charcoal industry. And then that bottomed out about the mid-1800s and then started to reverse course. And part of the reason it reversed course is the advent of the Industrial Revolution, where people started moving to cities. Manufacturing became a bigger way of life than living off the land and agriculture. And so our forest regrew in the last 150 years to the point where, as I said earlier, we're now considered to be about 65% forest cover. The bear population somewhat followed a similar trend. Bears are native to the state. They were found throughout the state in colonial times, but as their habitat, the forest was removed, their populations declined. Plus there was also human persecution of bears. So bears even fell further than our forest. It's thought that bears were completely gone from the state by the mid-1800s, and then didn't make a comeback until quite late. We don't believe we had a bear population back in the state until about the 1980s. So just as a recap of that little historical view, they are a native species, and they were found throughout the state pre-colonial times. And they were extirpated or locally extinct by the mid-1800s. And we first started getting evidence of a resident population in the 1980s to early 1990s. And some of that evidence of a resident population were multiple sightings of sows with cubs, so that suggested they were residents. And sightings close to the winter denning period. So if before then we did have bear sightings, but it was thought that a lot of those were just transient bears, young bears moving through and not necessarily what we could consider resident. So again, all that evidence suggested we had a resident bear population, small resident bear population, starting in the 1980s. And again, bears are very forest dependent. That's an interesting point to keep in mind. And our forest now in Connecticut is composed of a lot of older age class trees. If you talk to our foresters, they'll tell you, you know, they cruise our forests and measure trees, and we have a lot of trees that are in the older age classes. And having forest with older age class trees is important for bears for a number of reasons. The larger trees provide food sources for them. Larger trees often provide denning opportunities. When larger trees get blown over by wind or die from other reasons, there's more foraging opportunities. The insects in the rotting wood are important for bears. And also the trees provide escape cover for them. Black bears have evolved with trees and with forests, and one of their best ways to escape danger is to climb a tree. So the forest provides a lot of their food requirements, and those food requirements change throughout the year. In the springtime, about this time of year, wetlands are very important for bears. It's one of the first places where green plants sprout. If you were to go for a hike right now, or maybe a few weeks ago, and walk through a forest, you might not see much greenery, and not much greenery on the forest floor. But at the same time, if you were to visit a wetland and try to slog through a wetland, you'll find plants like this skunk cabbage, which is one of the most important spring foods, natural spring foods for bears. When they come out of the winter den, food sources are usually scarce, and they rely on these green plants, although these green plants do not provide much nutrition for them, and they often will continue to lose weight even though they're out of the den and foraging on plants. Their diet is very much a plant-based diet. Later in the summer and fall, they'll eat all varieties of berries. They eat the same berries that we cherish, like blueberries and raspberries, but they'll also eat a broader variety that we don't consider as food. They are an omnivore, though. They're not a strict herbivore, and they will add some animal to their diet. They will prey on fawns during the fawning period in late May, early June. They love colonial insects. They love bees, ants, wasps. They particularly love the domestic bees that we box up for them in those white beehives. But they're pretty much an opportunistic predator. They don't make their living as a predator, seeking out prey and chasing prey. The forest, again, is important. Many of the forest trees provide food for them. Mast is the term we use for the fruits of trees. So black cherry is one example of a forest tree that provides food. And all of our oak trees are important for providing food. We have quite a wide variety of oaks in Connecticut, oak tree species, and certain years they provide an abundance of acorns. And I would say acorns are probably the most important food for bears in the state. An abundance of acorns allows the bears to gain a lot of weight in the fall, the time of year when they're overeating. They're trying to gain weight because they're getting ready to enter their winter dormancy period. And then we do come to the winter. And a lot of times in the winter, foods are not available because plants have stopped growing, because we have snow cover and foods are covered by snow and ice. And as a strategy, bears have evolved this winter dormancy period. They typically enter their winter den in late November and may stay in the den through the end of March. And so if you count up those months, December, January, February, March, that's 4 months. That's 1/3 of the year. That's 1/3 of their life. 1/3 of their life that they're spending inactive in a den. It's quite an amazing physiological adaptation. In the den, they're not true hibernators. They do lower their body temperature and their bodily functions lower. They actually don't urinate or defecate while in the den. But at the same time, they can be roused very easily. They can be disturbed, and in a moment's notice, they can get up and start running. So when the bear population returned to the state, we started to collect information about them. And we started doing what I would term fairly passive research. And one of the best sources of information that we've had, and we continue to collect, is reported bear sightings. And we started this early on and encouraging the public when they see a bear to report it to us. And in the 1990s, you can see our sightings were very low, maybe 100 a year. But as time has gone on, the population of bears has grown and grown and grown and has spread. And sightings continue to grow. And it's almost an exponential curve, to the point in the last couple of years we're up near 7,000 to 9,000 sightings per year. So that's one piece of information. It's been quite valuable, and we feel it's a very good index of the population. So if we've had 9,000 sightings, that does not mean that we have 9,000 bears in the state, but it means that bears have been seen and reported to us 9,000 times. With the sighting information, we're also able to get information on the distribution of bears in the state. Now, when bears first came back to Connecticut, they were first seen in the very northwest corner, towns like Norfolk, Colebrook, Heartland, and that's where they started coming in. And so we were able to map some of these sightings. In this map, those towns lower in the state, further south in the state, were probably just dispersing bears and not resident bears. But we've mapped this out over the years, and you can see the northwest part of the state is where most of the bears have been seen through time, and the population density is increasing. These darker towns are towns with more than 100 sightings. And you can see much of Litchfield County, western Hartford County have an abundance of bears being reported. Now this map is now getting about 8 years old, and if I had a newer one, these darker shaded towns would extend much farther south than you see here. They would extend farther south down towards New Milford, Southbury, Waterbury, in that area. So the population has been growing. It's increasing in density where it's established, but also it's expanding its range. So that's some of the more passive work we've been doing with bears. Then starting about 2002, we decided to try to get better population information on bears through actually capturing them, trapping them, tagging them. And so getting population information on their movements, information on their reproduction. And so we needed to trap bears. And in the background of this photo is what we call a culvert trap. It's a piece of aluminum tubing with a sliding door. And in the foreground, a couple of our researchers with a bear that's been caught, and it's been drugged and ear tagged, as you can see. But based on the body language, you can tell something's going on. And over the next few minutes, they move this bear out of the way, and another bear happens along, obviously following scent, attracted by the scent of the previous bear. And in, again, a matter of a few minutes, follows that scent and gets captured. So sometimes it seems like it's too easy to capture bears, but it really isn't always that easy. But we have, when we first started doing this type of research, we were really eager to try to capture bears, ear tag them, and get information that way. Also, with every bear we handle, we take a number of physical measurements, and one of the more interesting ones is their body weight. And we're finding that Connecticut has pretty large bears compared to many places across North America and in New England. Our female bears, many of our female bears are over 200 pounds. A very light female bear might be closer to 110. And our male bears weigh between 150 and 450 pounds, and that typically depends on their age. The male bears in particular will keep gaining weight as they age. And we have handled a few male bears that we believe weighed 600 pounds. So that's a pretty dramatic sized bear. Bears at the end of their first year, what we call a yearling bear, typically weigh from 45 to 100 pounds. And if you talk to people that research bears in other states, having a 1-year-old bear that weighs 100 pounds is pretty impressive. So we're trapping bears, getting physical measurements, and ear tagging. You can see the ear tag on this bear. The ear tags have given us some interesting insights to their movements. As an example, one year we handled a bear in Goshen, ear tagged it, and subsequently that bear was struck and killed by a car near Albany. We caught a bear in Cornwall that had been previously ear tagged by Massachusetts biologists up near Amherst. And then we subsequently caught that same bear in Heartland. We handled a bear in Middletown one summer and released it into state forest in Portland. And that bear was subsequently harvested by a hunter in Vermont. An interesting large male bear that we had tagged with the ear tags in the Heartland area was subsequently seen down near Plymouth, then up near Granville, Massachusetts, and then back in the Plymouth area, and back up by Granby, and back and forth. This one male bear, over the course of just a few weeks, made this back and forth travel, a pretty long distance. And we joke that we thought maybe it had a girlfriend in one town, and at the other end he was married and had the wife. So ear tags have given us information, but we've also used radio telemetry, and we have radio collared female bears for quite a few years. Currently, we are monitoring approximately 25 female bears with radio collars. And the radio collars have been really valuable in getting information. With the radio collars, they work just like a transmitter on the bear, and then we need to use an antenna and a receiver to get the signal on the bear. We now have even higher tech radio collars that use a GPS unit, and the radio collar actually records its location in the GPS unit and the GPS unit into the radio collar. So this gives us much more accurate information and gives us many, many more location points than we used to get with the old-fashioned radio collar that just transmitted. So this radio telemetry is giving us information such as home range sizes. So all these yellow dots are from one female bear, and from these we can calculate home range sizes. And we're finding that our female bears have home ranges that approximately 10 square miles. So, and they're pretty static. They don't change a lot from year to year. And we're also finding they overlap with other female home ranges. These locations, these telemetry locations, also give us information on habitat use. If you are able to look closely at this map and look at all these bear locations from this bear, you will notice that the vast majority of them occur in forest cover. You can look and look at the different fields that are in this habitat, and very rarely are any of these locations in an open area. So bears really like to stay within forested cover. As an aside, in the lower right portion of this aerial view is Bradley Airport. So this is one bear that we referred to as airport bear. So with the radio telemetry, we're able to fine tune what type of habitats the bears are using. Forest cover versus non-forest cover, distance from roads, presence or absence of streams, what type of forest, hardwood, conifer, softwood. And from this, you can summarize what types of habitat they're using and what types they appear to prefer. And we've done this for bears that we've been studying in the northwest part of the state. And then if you take that information, you then have a habitat classification. You can then look forward and look across the rest of the state and say, well, how much of these habitat types does the rest of the state have? And so we can predict where bears are going to be in the future. And so even though bears still are not very common in eastern Connecticut, we know that there's very good bear habitat in eastern Connecticut. And with time, there's going to be a robust bear population on the eastern side of the state, just as there is now in the northwest part of the state. So bears have this winter denning behavior, and that's a very convenient behavior for us to do research on them. So we are able to go out into the winter and find these bears that have radio collars on them, and we can handle them. And we go to their winter dens, and winter dens come in various shapes and sizes. Some of the basic winter den is just a nest where a bear has raked up a pile of leaves and just lays in this pile of leaves all winter. Probably the most common type of winter den is a brush pile or where a tree has fallen over, providing some cover, but certainly not absolute cover. And a small number of our bear dens have been found in hollow trees. So some of these types of dens, they vary in how much cover they provide for the bears. There was a den that was in the root system of a tree, and this one actually would have been quite comfortable for the bear or for one of our assistants. We're finding more and more that as the bear population increases and actually spreads into more developed areas, that the bears are using human-provided structures, denning under porches, under decks, in culverts more and more often. And here's a bear that decided to den underneath an addition on a home. And you can imagine this was very cozy, very dry, and out of the wind and rain and snow. So by finding these winter dens, we're able, if we're careful, we're able to get close and give the bear an immobilizing drug, and we're able to change the radio collar. Some of the radio collars have data stored in them, and some need changing because of their batteries. But an important part of visiting the winter dens is we're able to determine reproduction. The cubs are born in January. So when we're visiting a den in March, we're able to count these numbers of cubs and determine a reproductive rate. And we're finding that our bears on average have just over 2 cubs per litter. That's on average, but we have found litters with only a single cub, and we've found litters of 4 cubs. Those cubs will stay with the adult female through the next denning period. And at that point, they're 1-year-old, we call them yearlings. And they will stay through that denning period, and then shortly after the denning period, typically in April and May, those yearlings will strike out on their own. And then the female will start the process over. The bears breed in June. She'll give birth in January, not breed the next year. She'll breed every other year, but have yearlings in the den, and the process continues on a 2-year cycle. So information, seeing cubs and then seeing them as yearlings the next year lets us actually look at the cub survival. Of the cubs we saw the previous year, how many do we see as yearlings this year? And cub survival is very high. It approaches 80%, which is extremely high for a wild animal. Our adult female survival is really phenomenally high. over 90%. And then actually, there's one female that we've been following for about 20 years now. So by looking at litter sizes, how early they breed, cub survival, we start to get a feeling for how the population might grow. And we feel that the population can easily grow at 10 to 15% per year. And that would be doubling every 5 to 7 years. That's a potential. Now the yearlings, this time of year, right now in April, many of the yearlings are becoming independent. They're a year and 4 to 5 months old, and they're becoming independent. They're small bears, typically weighing from 80 to 120 pounds, in that range. And they become independent. But it's different between the male yearlings and the female yearlings. The male yearlings will wander all over the place. A male yearling born in Heartland could wander as far as Greenwich or all the way over to Patchogue on the eastern side of the state. They really disperse and wander widely before they finally settle down. On the other hand, the female yearlings, they will typically not disperse very far. In fact, their home range usually overlaps the home range of their mother. And this is an interesting situation to think about, that for the population to spread, if every generation only moves a few miles, it takes quite a while for a bear population to spread across the landscape, because the female cohort of the population is not moving very far every generation. So these young bears, particularly the young male bears, do a lot of traveling, and they tend to get into trouble more than the other ages of bears. So now we have a bear population well established in a portion of the state, and the bear population has been adaptable. They've spread into our suburban towns. We have lots of bear presence in towns like Bloomfield, Farmington, West Hartford, Avon, Canton, Burlington. All of the suburban towns on the west side of Hartford are home to bears. So with bears and with being a very highly populated state, we have a lot of bear conflicts. And we deal with that a lot this time of year, and we'll be dealing with bear conflicts all the way from now through when they enter their winter den again next winter. Some of the most common conflicts are bears being attracted next to homes and damaging bird feeders, or getting into household garbage and strewing the garbage all over the place. But some of the conflicts are a little more serious. There's a whole continuum of conflicts. Here's some beehives that were completely damaged by a bear. And this could be many hundreds of dollars worth of value to a beekeeper. Looking at this pile of hives, I would say easily over $1,000. And we have situations like bears wandering into very urban areas. This is a photo of a bear from West Haven, very much deep in an urban area and stuck up in a very small grove of trees in a very urban area. just a few days ago in Danbury, we responded to a bear that was kind of stuck in the very center of town in Danbury. And bears will attack livestock. The most common types of livestock attacked are goats and sheep. Pigs are, but it doesn't seem that pigs are owned as frequently as sheep and goats. But another category here that we're seeing much more of is bears attacking chickens. The raising of chickens in backyards has become very popular. And it's not only popular with people, but it seems to be popular with bears too. And we get many reports of bears damaging chicken coops, getting into the chicken feed and killing the chickens. So our advice with many types of operations with livestock, and particularly raising chickens, is to use electric fencing. That's really the best insurance that a bear is not going to kill your chickens. And then maybe even more serious conflicts with bears. We have bears that do damage to homes, break windows, break doors. It's common if garbage is stored in a garage. It may be common for a bear to actually break a door of the garage to get into the garbage. And every year, as a bear population grows, we've gotten more and more cases of bears breaking into houses. And we take that as a very serious conflict. So as the bear population increases in density and the range expands, especially in Western Connecticut, the range expansion is taking bears further south in the state where we have more people and more residential populations. There's going to be more and more conflict. Many of us live in houses with yards that are bordered by forest. A lot of houses are located in very good bear habitat. Many of us can step outside, step off our lawn, and be in forest. And so it's no surprise that bears should be near our homes. What we need to do, though, is not encourage bears to come near our homes. So we need to take precautions to reduce the chance that bears start to visit our residential areas. So part of the coexisting with bears, part of the long-term welfare for bears and reducing conflicts with humans it really relies on people changing their behavior through public education. So there's very common sense steps that we hope people take if they live where bears are. And we sometimes refer to these as the do's and the don'ts. So removing bird feeders and bird food during the period when bears are not in their winter dens. So from March through November, you have a bird feeder up, you have a welcome mat out for a bear. Keeping your garbage cans inside a garage or a shed where they're not accessible to bears. Also, if that's not possible, and even if you are able to do it, adding ammonia into your trash makes it less attractive to bears. It's not an absolute, but it makes it less attractive and reduces the chance that a bear will try to get into your trash. And there's other attractions around your home. Barbecue grills often have a place where they store fat drippings, and that can be an attraction to bears. And by the way, these recommendations apply to other species too, like raccoons. So we hope people never intentionally feed bears. Bears that get fed get habituated to humans, get habituated to houses, become bold around people, and that can just lead to greater problems. Don't try to approach a bear. It seems like at times people want to get closer to a bear, maybe to get a photo or video, but it's best to give them their distance and not approach them. Pet food left outside can be another attraction. And if you do compost, if you add certain sweets or meat scraps from your kitchen, that can be an attraction. Things like apple peels or melon rinds will attract bears. If you are a camper or hiker, you might have a different set of questions. So when you're camping, never store food near your tent or in your tent. Many of our campgrounds now have places, lock boxes you can store food in overnight. And if they're not available, you can store food in the trunk of your car, and that's usually quite safe. You really shouldn't try to run from a bear or climb a tree. They run faster than humans. They climb faster than humans. Best thing to do is to back away from a bear. If you are hiking and you surprise a bear, make your presence known. So really you don't surprise the bear. Sometimes the bears are thought to have not the best eyesight, and from a distance not know what you are. So making noise, waving your hands alerts the bear that you're a human. Also, when you're hiking, it's a good idea to keep your dogs on a leash. Bears might view a dog as a threat, and if a dog is wandering off of a leash some distance from the owner and a bear views it as a threat, it might chase the bear. And often the first response from a dog is to run back to its owner. So that dog would be bringing the bear right back to the owner. Often you can just slowly walk away. If you see a bear on a trail, you can back off, maybe choose a different trail. And if there's not a different trail, maybe choose a different day or give some time for the bear to leave. If you're backcountry camping, hanging your food from a tree is often recommended. And there's specifics on this, how far from a tree trunk and how high. So those are some of the things. Many of our state properties now in the northwest part of the state have signage to alert people to the presence of bears, because now they are found throughout much of western Connecticut, and to give them these pieces of advice on how to avoid encounters with bears. So I kind of talked about most of these already, but at the very bottom, on the very rare occasion that a bear wants to consistently approach a person, the idea is to start making yourself look more offensive. So wave your hands. If you have something large, like a backpack or umbrella, wave it over your head. Try to make yourself look larger and offensive. If the bear persists, you can throw objects at the bear. So it's very, very rare for bears to be aggressive towards humans. But if if in the very rare event that that did occur, the advice is make yourself look more offensive, and if the bear persists, actually fight back. You can report bear sightings on the DEEP website. We have a form for doing that, and we appreciate it when people do report those sightings. And as I said earlier in the presentation, that's been a very useful set of data for us. And also, you can learn more information about bears on the website. Many of the do's and don'ts I just mentioned are on the website and are in a form that can be downloaded and shared. So black bears are here to stay. Part of the welfare of humans and bears is learning how to coexist with them and taking some of these coexistence measures. And with that, I'll be happy to try to answer questions that folks have.
Hello.
Yes.
Paul, it's me.
Hi.
Hello. So I've been trying to monitor questions. There's been some really great questions. So I've been trying to monitor them, and I think I got to a couple of them, but some of them I felt you'd better be able to cover, given all the typing. But so Lisa, to start off, Lisa is wondering, and this is a great question, due to our current pandemic with COVID, do you think there will be, or are we seeing a reduction in vehicle kills due to a reduction in traffic? And could it have an effect on the bear population or habitats, etc.?
Well, that's a good question. Definitely there's less vehicle traffic. I really hadn't thought about that. I would mention that in the last few years, we know of approximately 60 bears per year killed by cars. And I think it's a pretty logical step to believe that that rate will probably go down with this lower amount of traffic. And that, yeah, the fewer mortalities, probably an increase in the population might increase a little bit faster than it would otherwise. Before I let you go to the next question, the one thing I didn't mention during the presentation, I don't believe I did, is how many bears do we have? We now believe there's nearly 1,000 bears in the state.
Okay, so the next question I have is, at what population density would DEEP recommend a bear hunting season?
Okay, another good question. Our department is actually in favor of allowing a bear hunting season currently. And it's not based primarily on the density of bears. And actually that would be a metric that would be pretty expensive to measure on a regular basis. More based on the level of conflicts that we're seeing. And we would look at the bear hunting from the two benefits of it. One is controlling a growing bear population, but also we have a lot of bears that have very little fear of humans and are very bold, especially in developed areas. And that's a phenomenon that is not very common in areas where bears are hunted. And so bears approaching people or walking through a schoolyard, we see that a lot. And as I said, places where there's regular bear hunting, bears seem to maintain a higher fear of humans.
And I have a couple of questions I could kind of pack together, just regarding the danger of black bears. So someone said, Ava was wondering, and I kind of tried to answer her quickly, but how dangerous they are denning in anthropogenic dens, like porches, decks. So if you wanted to go over that quickly, and then I could say the other two that are kind of related to how dangerous black bears are.
Okay. Well, considering that black bears have just an expansive range across the North American continent, and they occur in a lot of places in close association with people. The cases of bears injuring people is really, really very low. And I'm talking about black bears. But at the same time, people are injured by black bears, and black bears have killed humans over the North American continent. So the danger is really quite low. They seem to be pretty tolerant of human harassment, so to speak. And the bear in a den, you know, we, like many, the type of research we do at bear dens is done in many states, and lots of people are doing research where they go out in the winter and they purposely try to get close to bears in dens. And our biggest fear is the bear running away, because then we can't do what we want to do. One of our least fears is the bear being aggressive towards us, even though in most cases it's a bear that has offspring with it. It's just quite rare for them to be aggressive.
Someone asked about when a sow or a bear in general, but primarily probably a sow with cubs, might bluff charge. How would you handle that?
Bluff charges. So if people don't know, when a bear is feeling defensive, like it's feeling threatened, sometimes they will do a behavior called a bluff charge, or a combination of behaviors. One is huffing. They'll just
How would I type a question?
Why did you do this stuff on
they'll exhale and give a loud exhale of breath, like a huff. They'll swat the ground with their paws, and they may bluff charge. And the bluff charge is the bear will take a few strides towards you. And it can be extremely unnerving because you don't know when it's going to end. But they typically just take a few quick steps towards you with no intent of really following through and truly attacking you. So when a bear bluff charges, that means the bear is defensive, and the best thing to do is to give it some space. In that case, don't be offensive yourself, but just give the bear some space. I mean, it's kind of trying to scare you away, and if you bow to its wishes, then it's not going to feel so threatened.
I think someone was trying to ask a question verbally. Did you want to ask whoever that was? No? Okay. I have one more question that I couldn't get. Can parents teach their kids about being safe in their backyards, like if they're outside playing alone?
Okay, can you still hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I missed a little bit part of the question. I think is what to teach your kids in the backyard.
Yeah. Well, how do you teach your kids to act around bears in the backyard?
Right. Yeah. Well, the the best thing is to, well, of course, the smaller the child, the more the adult supervision there should be. But the best thing is to go into the house or into a car if a bear comes close. If for some reason they would have to go closer to the bear to go into their house, going into a car is fine. But that's probably the best thing to do. Making noise also works with children. And in general, all of our advice about not having food attractions would apply to children having food outdoors too. So, you know, not leaving treats outdoors for a long time, or if there were treats and there's a mess, clean it up sooner rather than later.
I think one more. Is that okay if we do one more?
That's fine with me.
All right. So, regarding, yeah, that's what I was just gonna ask. Regarding, where did it go? Regarding overbrowsing by deer, is bear predation on fawns a notable check on deer populations?
That's a good question, and we do know that in some areas of North America, bears are one of the leading predators on fawns. But we also know, I know there was research in Pennsylvania where they found bears to be one of the leading predators on fawns. But they also knew that that level of predation, natural predation on the deer, wasn't enough to control the deer population. Freudian slip there, the deer population. So it can be a contributing factor, but the level at which it occurs itself won't be enough to control the deer population.
Okay. I think that probably covers it.
Okay. Okay. Well, we are almost at the end of our time frame here. I have one quick question, if I could ask that.
Sure.
Is with our trend in warmer winters and less snow due to climate impacts, are we seeing any change in survival rate or in maybe upticks of young or something of that nature?
Well, we do know for sure that larger bears tend to breed earlier and have more young. And a bear being able to forage longer and maybe not expend as much energy in the winter leads to it being a larger bear. So I would say, you know, one of our factors why our bears are so large and productive is our diverse food, but also we don't have as long of winters as, say, Maine and Vermont have. So I would say if all else being, you know, just looking at the climatic factors, that yes, we will see higher levels of reproduction if the bears don't have to den as long and if they can forage longer.
Okay, I do know that I had a hand raise here, and so I'm going to unmute them. It's Reagan Huntley.
Yeah, hi. Many cases of bears attacking campers, like at night, in tents. Or is that unusual?
Yes, it's unusual. I'm trying to think of a single case in Connecticut. We've had, I recall, a daytime situation where a bear raided the tent while the campers were gone, but actually attacking campers themselves in tents, pretty unusual. Not unheard of across the continent, but unusual. And typically, they're more interested in any food stored in the tent than actually the humans.
Okay. Well, thank you very much all for attending. We had a very good group and some really great questions. If you have any additional questions, you can always email the DEEP Wildlife Division and possibly Paul Rigo directly. But we will have another in our series of wildlife updates, which will include the bobcats and bobcat research that will be provided by Melissa on April 30th, I believe. Is that correct, Melissa?
Yes.
All right. So hopefully we'll be able to at least hear all of you at that time. Thanks again. Bye.
Bye all.
Bye.